Come here, kitty. So how many books did you read this month? Hey guys, so here's a little April wrap-up for you. This month went by really, really fast, and I'm not sure whether that's because I was reading the same book for most of the month or some other reason, but it was definitely like one of the fastest months ever. It just felt, and again, honestly, the last few months of my life have gone by ridiculously fast, like they haven't even happened. Kind of feels like October of last year was like last week or something for me, and I'm not sure why, but anyway, April wrap-up. No TBR for May. I'll talk about that in a second. But April wrap-up. Yes, at the beginning of the month, I started reading The Arithmetist by Brandon Sanderson. Well, I was halfway through reading it at the beginning of the month, so I finished it in April. And I gave a review on it, full review, and you can go watch that if you want to. It was really good. I liked it a lot. Definitely more middle grade Brandon Sanderson kind of style, and I really liked it. It was really fun to read. I'm counting this as like a half book for this month. The second two books that I read this month were Buddhist scriptures, trying to learn more about religions. Pick up this. Honestly, don't know anything about Buddhism before I read this, and this was pretty interesting. It was definitely not exactly what I was expecting. It does have a lot of scriptures from different types of Buddhism, which was really interesting, and basically the structure of it is that this guy will talk a bunch about what the scripture is about to say, and that really helped a lot. And then you read the scripture itself, and you just kind of try and tie everything together for you as you read it, which was really interesting. It was a bit dry at times, but also it did have its good parts. And I think it kind of expected you to know more about Buddhism than I did when you first get into it. Like, I just think it assumes you already know some stuff about Buddhism, which I did not, and some things just kind of went over my head a little bit. But I did like write down a lot of stuff as I was reading to try and remember some of the things I was reading about. And it's definitely a very interesting religion to read about. And then I read the Dhammapada, which is just like it's like a full scripture of things that the Buddha has said, like the teachings of the Buddha, which is definitely pretty interesting. I read it in one sitting. It's really short, and there's definitely a lot of interesting things it has to say. I mean, I don't really know how else to talk about this. I'm not like Buddhist, and I don't really believe in anything that it's talking about, but it was definitely really interesting to learn about, and I really appreciate learning about it. I didn't put like note cards in this or anything. I just underlined things that I found to be interesting. And I read this after I read this, so I found some connections between the two, which is interesting. I like kind of wrote in some different connections that I saw to things that this book talked about and things that were in the actual teachings of Buddha. I know there's plenty more Buddhist stuff out there to read because there's a lot of different schools of Buddhism. Honestly, it's a bit confusing for me, but I'm sure as the more time goes on, the more I spend studying stuff like this, the more I'll understand it and the other religions I'm studying. Then I read Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. This is kind of very related to Buddhism. I read this directly after reading those books, and I started reading it right before I started reading Infinite Jest. This was pretty interesting. I know it's like a translation of the original text, but it's really I found the writing to be really like disjointed and really bland most of the time, and I found the story itself to be a bit bland as well. Like, I don't know if the story is necessarily the whole point of it. I guess the message it's trying to send is the point, and I'm not really sure I even agree with the message it's trying to send. To a certain extent I do, but to another extent I don't. Maybe that's because I'm not Buddhist. But there's this like whole thing in here where basically the main character Siddhartha he's like this monk type of guy, and he decides to leave off to go find the Buddha with his friend, and then he meets the Buddha and he decides he doesn't want to follow the Buddha. He wants to go off and do what the Buddha did. He wants to actually go find his own way, his own path, instead of following the path of that Buddha. And he leads him down to this road where it's just, instead of doing that, he kind of gets corrupted. But then the whole like situation in which he gets corrupted, it's caused by a woman, and it was so weird because like it kind of hints that him meeting this woman is like the grand moment in his life that led him down this path of bad things, this path of lust and greed and not caring about anything but those two things. And it just felt really kind of ridiculous at some points. I'm honestly not sure what it was trying to say sometimes. I think I gave it like 3 out of 5 stars maybe, I'm not completely sure. It was a pretty fast read, but I don't know if I enjoyed reading it all that much. And I'll just say I started reading Infinite Jest while I was reading Siddhartha, and I just did a full review on this. I did a halfway through like thoughts video on this a couple weeks ago, and then I did a full review yesterday. I just posted it yesterday. I finished reading it last Sunday, and it took me a few days to actually get the review out. For this, I really enjoyed it. It was really frustrating, but also really rewarding. Pretty much what you expect from a book like this. It had so much going on. It was so interesting. So many great things to say about so many different subjects and themes, but also just incredibly difficult to get through in some parts. It took me like 3 weeks to get through this. I mean, that's a little bit better than I think some people, just because I kind of had to force myself to keep going some nights, and I kind of stayed up way later than I should have sometimes reading this just to read like 50 pages a day. I had to stay up several hours past when I should have been asleep, and I had to like force myself to do that because I didn't want to keep reading this. I wanted to finish it before the end of April. Not because it's bad or anything, I just don't like the idea of reading a book for that long. Like, even though it is a long book, I don't usually take that long to read long books. This was just so dense. And yeah, if you want to hear my whole thoughts on it, go watch the review. I think I did a pretty good job of summarizing most of my thoughts in that. And then while reading Interview Jest, after I finished reading Siddhartha, I started reading Escape from Camp 14 on the side. This is by Blaine Harden. It's about this guy named Shin. He is the first and only person that we know of so far to have been born inside of a North Korean prison camp and escape. North Korea is just such a disgusting place. Honestly, it's freaking terrible, and they have these prison camps, at least 14 of them. I'm pretty sure there's like 15 or 16 of them. I can't remember the exact number of how many there are, but there's a bunch of them. North Korea denies that these camps even exist, even though we can clearly see them, like even on Google Maps and satellite maps and stuff like that. You can clearly see that they're there, and yet North Korea completely denies that they're there. And then we have stories like this coming out of them that just shed so much light on the terrible things that happen in North Korea. Shin was born in Camp 14. The North Korean prison camps. The North Korean prison camps have existed for 12 times as long as the Nazi concentration camps did, and just tons and tons of people are dying all of the time in these camps. Shin was born in one. That's kind of what they do. They give certain inmates like the chance to have kids, and then the kids are raised in the prison camp and are never allowed to leave ever. Basically, if you try to escape, you will be shot, will be executed, and if basically you're raised to not be human in this camp. They raise everybody in this camp to snitch on each other, to rat out whoever they can. They make a huge deal out of no one ever breaking the rules, any of the rules, and if anyone ever does, you are required to snitch on them, or you could be given the same punishment, and the punishment for breaking the rules is almost always death, execution. Shin's mother was actually executed, and along with his brother. His mother and his brother were executed right before Shin's eyes. And there's like a prison within the prison that Shin was tortured in when he was like 13 or 14 for several months. He came close to dying several times. People died around him all the time, and he felt nothing about it. His fellow students in the crappy little school that they have going on there, where they're run by soldiers. The soldiers are the teachers in those schools. Kids would just disappear all the time, and no one would even care. Basically, there is no crime going on with any of the people that are in there. Basically, Shin is in this camp because Shin's father's brother or something like tried to get out of North Korea to go somewhere else, and now because his father's brother did that, Shin's entire family was sentenced to live in Camp 14 for the next several generations. They have to stay in this camp to cleanse them of their sins. And basically, the camps do tons of work for North Korea because North Korea is such a poor, terrible country. And just like the Kim family within North Korea, the people that lead it, first it was Kim Il-sung, and then it was Kim Jong-il, and now it's Kim Jong-un. They are just terrible leaders. They do absolutely nothing for their country. And just this book and Shin's story is proof of that. Anyway, this story was just freaking heartbreaking. Like, there just is no way to figure out the problems in this. It really just lays everything out for you, how it happened. Shin's perspective on how everything happened. And man, it's so heartbreaking to read about this. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed reading it. I thought it was just a really interesting look into Shin's life, and I'm just really glad I picked this up. I really wanted to learn more about North Korea, and yeah, you should definitely pick this up if you're interested in any of that stuff at all. Then I read this book called Hidden by Paul Jacksunas. Paul was actually one of my creative writing professors in college. Like I said in the hall where I held this video, I think it was February, he never like talked about his book or anything, he never like tried to advertise himself or anything. But I looked him up. I usually look at my teachers to see what the types of things that they've done are. A lot of my teachers were artists or filmmakers or writers or something like that, and I just wanted to see what their work was like. And so I found this, and I really wanted to read it. It doesn't have very good ratings on Goodreads, but I did enjoy it. I don't know if that's because I know Paul and I've heard his voice and I've heard him read. I know what his reading voice sounds like. I know the way he talks and stuff like that, and I totally just enjoyed reading this because I could imagine him writing it. This book basically follows this woman named Maggie. Several years ago, she was like sort of attacked. She was kind of like beaten in the head. She barely survived it, and she thought that her husband Nate Duke did it to her. They had been having some problems up until then, and she always thought she saw him being the one that attacked her. Though now, several years later, she's very fuzzy. Her mind is very fuzzy. She's kind of a bit paranoid. She's having a hard time remembering a lot of stuff. Has a lot of seizures. It kind of comes out that this guy who apparently used to stalk her takes the blame for, like, several years after the attack happened, after Nate had been put in prison because everybody just believed that Maggie was right, that Nate did it. This guy who used to stalk her comes out and says that he was the one that attacked her, and she doesn't believe it, but tons of other people are believing it. So Nate is like released from prison, everybody believes that this other guy did it, and she is kind of trying to piece together what happened. And that's basically what the story is about. It kind of switches back and forth between present and past, like how she's dealing with things now, with the struggles of trying to convince everybody that she was right, and then looking back on her marriage to Nate, and on that night to figure out what happened, to figure out what actually happened. And anyway, yeah, I really did like this. I liked reading it. There were some problems. Sometimes it felt a little bit stiff, and it's hard to really place your finger on any of the problems that it might have. The characters were pretty good, and overall the story was really interesting. It wasn't necessarily what I expected, but I really did like the ending. I think a lot of people that gave it bad ratings didn't like the ending, but I actually really liked the way it ended. And yeah, if any of that sounds interesting, you should definitely check this out. I mean, it's very not well known, it has barely any reviews at all, and it could really use some more. So if you're at all interested in that, definitely give this a shot. And after finishing Infinite Jest on Sunday, I started reading Mystic River by Dennis Lehane. Finished this actually just today, so technically read half of it in April and half of it in May. I love this book. It was so good. This is the first book I've ever read by him. I love the movie Shutter Island, which is a movie based on a book by him that I have not read. I really want to read it at some point. And honestly, I just love this book so much. I've never seen the movie. I'm actually going to do a book to movie comparison probably tomorrow. I have to watch the movie tonight, and I'll do the review comparison thing tomorrow, and you'll see that sometime this week because I really love this. I really want to talk about it. I'm definitely going to be checking out more of his writing. There's like a bunch of his books on Book Outlet right now, and I'm thinking about buying every single one of them because I just really love the way this was written, and the story, and the characters, and pretty much everything about it. I'm really excited to see the movie. I've heard it's amazing, and I've heard that it's not a very good adaptation of the book. Honestly, I have no idea. I guess we'll see, and I'll let you know how I felt. So anyway, that's everything that I read in April. I'm not going to do a May TBR because I don't know exactly what I'm going to be reading this month. I know that I just started I Am Legend and Other Stories by Richard Matheson, and I plan on finishing this within the next couple of days. I meant to read this last month, but Infinite Jest took me way too long, so I couldn't get to it. And then after that, I already know that I'm going to be reading The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. Really, really interested in reading this. Heard amazing things about it, heard bad things about it. Really want to form my own opinion. It sounds really interesting to me, so I'm really hyped up to read this. And then I'm going to be reading Saga, probably all 3 volumes right in a row, just because I'm sure I'll get through them pretty quick, and I want to do reviews on all of them. Probably do like a separate review on the first one and then combine the second 2 into one review, I'm not sure. And then I might be participating in a Lies of Locke Lamora read-along with several booktubers that was just arranged, except I don't own the book yet. I'm going to try to go to a bookstore really soon to hopefully get it, if I can find it at the bookstore. If not, then I'll probably order it, see when it gets here. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to be participating, but I'm pretty sure that I am because I really want to read that book. I just need to go get it first. Other than that, I have no idea what I'm going to read this month. I'm just going to let whatever happens happen, whatever I decide I'm in the mood for, and I'll let you know what that is as the month goes along. Anyway, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon.